Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another webinar along with our partner, Repro Clinic. Today we have a wonderful guest, is Laura Gilstrap, if that's correct how I pronounce it, beautiful. And of course, Esther, the CEO of Repro Clinic, and me, your fertility coach here. We're gonna be talking today about PCOS and the nutrition and lifestyle management with fertility nutritionist, Laura. So we were planning this for a few months ago and finally we got all together. We're gonna be talking about all these incredible health lifestyle that Laura has created herself. She went through her own fertility journey, but I'm gonna leave that to her. And I'm gonna just now, please Laura, introduce yourself, then Esther, and we can jump with the questions that you have sent. I have few here, and this video will be also live in our Facebook pages and in YouTube. And of course, Laura will have hers to share with all the social media channels that she has. Please, Laura, welcome to Repro Clinic, to our series of webinars. We want to hear about you, a little bit about your journey, and then we jump with Esther.
Thank you, Monica and Esther. I am just honored to be here, and I'm very excited to share my journey and my wisdom and my literature that I have read along the way. I'm a registered dietitian. I'm located in South Carolina in the United States. So I'm a registered dietitian and nutritionist licensed here. I have been a dietitian for many years, and I've worked in the clinical setting for a decent amount of those. I worked with critical care and long-term respiratory patients struggling with anything from chronic kidney disease to gastrointestinal disorders, diabetes, wound care. So from a clinical standpoint, I have a good foundation. My personal journey with PCOS has definitely driven my private practice and to implement my knowledge and my research and to provide those techniques to my clients. Obviously, my clientele is 95% female, but I do work with some of the males out there to optimize sperm quality. But a little bit about me is I was diagnosed with PCOS myself in 2013. My husband and I had been married for a month, and we were trying to have a baby, and I lost my period. So I went into the doctors and I was diagnosed with PCOS on the spot. I immediately jumped into fertility treatments because of my age and my condition. And so I've been undergoing assistance with my physicians for about 8.5 years. It took us 4 years and 2 rounds of IVF and 2 transfers to have our daughter. She's now 3.5. After her, we did do another egg retrieval. So that would have been my 3rd. We unfortunately did not genetic test. And because of my age and PCOS, that did result in 4 miscarriages since 2019. And with that, it was a major learning experience. And, now I can, yes, it was sad, but now I can certainly talk on that. And I have, a major dose of empathy for women who are also in my situation. So that has been my personal journey and struggle. And I'm very public about it. I do highly advocate for women like us and our situations. And I want to be part of their journey. I'm invited to baby showers and I get calls about all sorts of things. I feel like I'm part therapist. and with that, my private practice has grown to be sort of like a family.
So that is amazing. You are so right. We definitely need to advocate more for that because there is still so many. I was one when I started 15 years ago, like I told Esther, I was alone. There was no social media. I felt ashamed. And then we realize that infertility is an illness and we need to advocate for that. We need to, create and normalize that more because it's like a normal other illness that can happen to men or women. like a male factor. So I really appreciate that there is more community and more women like you and me and Esther's team coming and trying to normalize that. Thank you so much, Laura. So Esther, you have the word, introduce yourself, because I'm sure we're gonna have new audience too.
Yeah, I'm Dr. Esther Velilla. I'm a biologist. I'm not a medical doctor, I'm a biologist. I want to clarify that because sometimes patients or people just mix this concept. I'm the CEO of ReproClinic. It's an IVF center in Barcelona. And as you say now, you cannot commit to the doctor that you have next in your street. You have to go to the ones that you feel confidence, you have empathy, and you really trust. And now the world is completely open and we don't have barriers. So we are receiving patients from all over the world for more than 20 different countries. We speak different languages, and it's very nice to work in that system because every culture is completely different. Every country has different needs. And you see that you have to adapt yourself and your system based on different country. For example, it's quite interesting what you say about advocacy in fertility. Is really, we see that on the last years that is more open to everyone and people start talking loudly about their condition and their process. But in some countries, you don't have that. Probably it's not legal, they are ashamed because it's not legal, or they have some social reasons or cultural reasons. And you have to accept that, you have to understand that, and you have to adapt to this population as well. And it makes things difficult for the people to start the treatment and the process. So it's nice to see how this fertility is changing in all the world.
Okay, thank you so much, Esther. So I think we can jump with our subject, PCOS. A lot of women, suffer from that. And I think it's something that I wish I knew when I was younger, when I was a teenage, that, for example, PCOS could be treated, that having missing periods is not normal, that having painful periods is not normal, that having heavy periods is not normal. I was diagnosed with endometriosis stage 4, and I was 32, and I didn't know. Why I didn't know? Because all my aunts, my mom, all of them, they had terrible, painful periods. They used to even lose consciousness. I did faint too. And of course it came, and they had kids with the blow of a kiss. So for them, when I was like that, she was telling me that it was normal. She saw it on her sisters and they got pregnant and there was infertility. I thought that I'm gonna be like them, that I'm gonna get pregnant in the minute that I will have intercourse with my husband, that's it. All my family is fertile, that's it. It doesn't. So today, for example, with my 15-year-old daughter, I keep a track of her period since the first moment she had it. And every month she tells me, Mom, I got my period. And I ask her how it is. It's painful. Is it heavy? What is the color? She's like, why you ask me all of that? She got used to it already, but because I don't want her to go through that things. So with PCOS, one of the questions that came from the registers, and now that I see you, Laura, it's interesting. One of the our audience asked if PCOS only happens to women that are overweight. And I see you seem so, like fit. And look, why they think that? And if it is this true?
So it is correlated with overweight and obesity, but that is not entirely true every time. 80% of women with PCOS are classified as overweight. That's a BMI over 25. And a BMI of obesity is over 30. There's that 20% of women like myself who are what we call thin PCOSers. And I don't love that term because PCOS does not discriminate. It's just going to run its course on any women who has, just been preconditioned to have it. It does run, they say it can be tied to genetics. That's what the studies are showing. I, however, have no PCOS in my bloodline, and I'm the 20%. So Literature does say that it is tied with obesity and overweight, but that's not the case every time. I had a doctor, I was diagnosed by my OB with it. And then about 6 months later, I went in because PCOS has a correlation also with high anxiety rates and depression rates. Mm. And I was struggling with anxiety. So I went to go see a PCP, and he looked at me and I was like, I have PCOS. And he was like, no, you don't. And I was like, excuse me? Yes. How do you know? Like, you haven't even seen my ovaries, right? And he was a male, no offense, but some physicians just don't correlate it, but it is a trend now. I mean, I work with plenty of women who have an average BMI, but have PCOS. And with that, this treating it with food and diet is a little bit different. It's not about weight loss. It's more about controlling what's happening inside of your bloodstream and your insulin resistance.
Yes, absolutely. I think that I have a client actually, she's 35 and she is overweight, but she's doing everything right. Like she buys her food, healthy, organic. She tried, like her best, not even to drink a wine. And she was diagnosed with secondary infertility. And she's telling me, I don't know why I cannot lose weight. And I know that weight can play a big part in the fertility. So it's really kind of, yes, I think that sometimes the fact of the weight is also something I don't like too much. But it's true what you said, there is no discrimination on that. So
well, Monica, I wanted to touch on one thing that I forgot about. When it comes to being overweight with PCOS, there's also a couple other metabolic conditions that are tied in with that should also be addressed. You have high cholesterol, high triglycerides, and insulin resistance. Those also tend to come with obesity or being overweight. And so those are also things that, as a dietitian, or if your patients or clients are working with somebody, that their physician or their dietitian should address and look at and use as markers and possible baseline numbers to get down.
Yes, absolutely.
And diabetes as well, right? Because there is a tendency of diabetes type 2 as well.
Yep, and pre-diabetes too. So you have to watch those numbers, because once you are classified as pre-diabetic, that's one thing. But if you cross over into that diabetic threshold, you're not coming back. And you are well on your way to possibly being on a lifetime of medications and are possibly moving toward insulin injections. And you don't want all those, especially at our age of, in those reproductive years and those fertile years. We're way too young, and we have so many resources available to prevent that from happening.
Yes, absolutely. Esther, you have any questions from your side? Because
I have plenty of questions for everyday our patients that ask for us. So as you say, there is a tendency of having hypertension, having overweight, all things that you say. So I suppose that the nutrition that you focus on are based on establishing the sugars, carb metabolism, these things. Can you explain a little bit more how you focus a nutrition plan based on that?
Yeah, great question, because that is my focal point. When it comes to PCOS, more times than not, it is tied with insulin resistance and carbohydrate management. And when clients do come to me, typically their physicians have run these numbers. So we'll get a fasting glucose or an A1C. So I know what I'm working with going in. But if you don't have those numbers and you have PCOS, it might be safe to assume that you are struggling with sugar management. And so with that, my plan, my overall scheme is to sort of treat you as a diabetic, even though you're not. PCOS is sometimes called type 3 diabetes because that we now know that insulin resistance is directly correlated with ovulation and weight gain and egg quality. So I'm going to look at, first and foremost, what are you taking in? What are the macros? So your carbs, fats, and proteins are your macronutrients. It's not so much for me about calorie count. While that does play a part when it comes to weight reduction, with PCOS, that carbohydrate number is my most detrimental number. And with that, I want to also make sure, I want to know what time my clients are eating, because having a consistent, steady amount of carbs in the system is crucial for glucose management. And then, just to throw another layer on top of it,
yes,
pairing those carbs with the proper proteins and fats. And I have a term called no naked carbs. I love it, and people get a kick out of it. Every time that, you know, a person with diabetes, prediabetes, PCOS, even with endometriosis, you're always going to want to have a carbohydrate paired with a protein or a fat. And this is extremely important for insulin management. So if you think back to biology and how the human body works, every time we eat a carbohydrate, it gets broken down into sugar. Everything essentially is broken down into a sugar. Carbohydrates are very quick burning molecules. They're very quick burning macros. And so they're going to hit your bloodstream really fast. Your pancreas is the organ that secretes insulin to sort of take that sugar and move it into the cell for energy. If your carbs are burning too fast and being released too quickly into the bloodstream, your pancreas sort of freaks out. And then in turn, your ovaries freak out. This is a very loose way of putting it. Wow. And then you don't ovulate. And then you're going to store insulin and blood sugar as fat. And so we see this like rapid weight gain typically in the abdomen for PCOS women. And the only way to really get that down is to manage your blood sugar by slowing down digestion. Protein and fat has 9 calories per gram. So it's a heavier food. And, we know that term, the meat sweats. So when you get the meat sweats, that's because you got a big chunk of meat, which is a fat sitting in your stomach and slowly digesting. Well, having the meat sweats is terrible, and you should not overconsume at a giant porterhouse in one sitting. Having, 3 to 4 ounces at a time of meat, along with, a half a baked potato, is a very balanced meal. You actually are getting carbohydrates, fats, and protein.
So I suppose that it's better to have regular meals, like 4 or 5 a day,
yes,
small ones, than like we used to do at least in Europe. There's 3 big meals a day, and that's
Latin America the same. It's the same.
So it's the small ones and more balanced during the day. But you don't consider to reduce carbs at all. I mean, just to focus on the protein diet.
No, I certainly encourage a reduction in carbohydrates. And I think it depends on every person. Everybody is different. Everybody's size is different. Everybody processes them a little bit differently. For the average woman, the average woman that I work with is typically anywhere from 175 to 250 pounds. That's where I'm getting a majority of my clients, and they range from 5'2" to 5'6", right? I typically assign, and this does vary on every single woman, somewhere from like 75 to 100 and maybe 20, 150 grams of carbohydrates a day. And that is spread out with each meal. So we're looking to try to do 20 to 40 grams of carbs at most.
In order to speak about grams, because for someone it could be difficult to see the picture, mm-hmm. Can we see it in a regular dish, for example, 1/3 of the dish, or
sure, so
or less than that?
One serving of carbohydrate is like 1 piece of bread, 1/3 of a cup of rice, 1/4 of your plate, right? So if we take a plate and we cut it into 4 parts, 1/4 is a serving of a carbohydrate, a starch. A rice, pasta is 1 serving. That has 15 grams. So let's talk about breakfast.
Okay.
So if you're having breakfast, a wonderful breakfast, in my opinion, would be, you know, 1 serving of eggs would be, because that's high in protein. And then you can do 1/3 of a cup of oats. So like some oatmeal would be your carbohydrates. You're going to want to have about 1 serving of that carbohydrate in the morning. And you're going to pair it with some eggs, put a little cheese on it to get your vitamin D and your fat and your protein. Another good option for breakfast could actually, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with overnight oats.
I do.
Okay, so
Yeah.
those are good. So the oats themselves, you know, 1/3 of a cup of oats, and then you put some almond milk in it, and then you refrigerate it overnight. That is the basic concept of overnight oats. So you're getting your fiber in your oats, you're getting 1 serving of carbohydrates, and then if you add the almond milk and or maybe some peanut butter or some seeds, so maybe chia seeds or flaxseed, you're getting your healthy fats and omega-3s, and then you have your protein and your fat. What this does for the body, so let's break that down. Those chia seeds and those healthy fats that have omega-3s are wonderful for inflammation and for blood supply, blood circulation, lymphatic circulation. So that's going to help things maneuver around the body. The fat and the protein are going to fill you up and replenish your muscles with anything that has been depleted. And the carbohydrates are going to give you energy and fiber. So they're going to help you poop. So that is like a complete breakfast in one sitting. Does that?
And also, probably also it's important to choose the right carbs, right? Because most of the people tends to use refined carbs.
Yes.
And because they don't like the fiber one. But it's one thing that probably is good to move on, right?
Yeah, and like let's really quickly define what a refined carb is.
Yes.
A refined carbohydrate is any carbohydrate or any food that has been stripped of its nutrients. So a piece of white bread and a piece of whole grain bread, that white bread is refined. It has been stripped of its outer layer that is the fiber that has all the vitamins and minerals. So if you're looking at like a husk of wheat, the manufacturers take out essentially all the nutrients, and you have white bread. It tastes good. I love white bread, and I'm not saying, you know, don't ever have white bread, but you know, everything in moderation. And if you want to get those nutrients, because remember with PCOS, we have tons of egg quantity, but we have very poor egg quality. And so by hitting those eggs essentially with as much nutrition as you can, you're going to help to achieve your goal, restore your cycle, manage blood sugar, reduce sugar cravings. So that's a refined carb. When it comes to choosing refined or not choosing refined carbs, we're going to want to go with, you know, your whole grain pasta, your whole grain breads. You know, multigrain is fine. Oat breads are fine. Oats themselves, so like oatmeal is actually a gluten-free option if you're struggling with gluten. And so, and it's not stripped of its nutrition. We should talk about gluten.
Yes, I had it here. I had 2 questions here, if I may, Esther, and then we can, you know, like switch. There is 2 things I wanted. Yes, I have it. So gluten is one of the things. And another thing that another of the audience people, you know, that register ask is the sourdough bread. Why? Because, you know, she heard that sourdough bread has some probiotics. Probiotics help, you know, our digestive system to do poopy and all of that. How these probiotics and gluten can be related to PCOS condition?
Sure. So let's talk about the probiotics first and the sourdough bread. I never think of sourdough bread as a fermented food, and I know that I should, but that's very interesting that triggered her to think that.
Yes.
So fermented foods, so sourdough bread, sauerkraut, kimchi, kombucha, those types of foods, I highly encourage them for any health condition and or every human being on this planet. whether you have PCOS or not, because it helps you poop. And let's talk about why does it help you poop. Fermented foods have live cultures in them. So they have actually live bacteria. In your gut, we have good bacteria and we have bad bacteria. When we have bad bacteria, it overruns the good bacteria, and it can do a bunch of things. It can cause immune dysfunction. It can cause SIBO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. It can cause leaky gut syndrome. And that is essentially, the integrity of your intestines are compromised, and the toxins that are in your gut can move over that gradient and into the bloodstream and then float around your system. So it's a way of preventing systemic toxins from floating around. So we want as many good bacteria as possible. So I would say that if you are, if you've had a dose of antibiotics, or if you are struggling to have regular bowel movements, implementing a serving of probiotics every day would be great. I actually just I'm writing a blog post, a food recipe post with coconut yogurt is one of my active ingredients. So I was actually just reading this morning about live cultures in yogurt. If people are struggling to, find a meal with sauerkraut and kimchi, which are not normal daily intakes, yogurt is always a good option. And then if you have a dairy intolerance, or if you're struggling with inflammation, doing like a plain coconut yogurt would be a great item for breakfast. So you're getting vitamin D, you're getting live cultures, you're getting protein. That's just a really good and simple way to get it in. Kombucha, you could always, which is readily available in the US and our grocery stores, it's available. It's not cheap though. I'll tell you what, it's like $2.50 a bottle, which is sort of ridiculous.
The small one, yes.
Yeah. So I actually used to brew my own. On Amazon, you can get a SCOBY, which is a mushroom, and you get the jar and you grow your own fermented tea, because kombucha is just essentially black tea with a SCOBY in it. And then I flavor it with ginger or lemon or lime. My husband thinks it's absolutely disgusting that this cream is growing in our closet because it needs to be in the dark, right?
Yes, yes.
But any way that you can get, live active cultures into your body every single day would be great. Especially in the times of COVID, because we want immune health and we want to stay healthy. So now let's pivot and let's talk about gluten. I have a lot of women come to me and say, I gave up gluten. It's going to fix my PCOS. No, what you have essentially done by giving up gluten is you have reduced your carbohydrate intake. So gluten is a protein within the wheat particle. So when you give up gluten, you've essentially giving up wheat products, or you're buying wheat products that don't have gluten in them. Gluten can also be like an additive or a preservative. So if you are buying a product that is in the grocery store that is a boxed or processed item, you always want to look for gluten-free. But foods that don't naturally have gluten in them are your fruits, your vegetables, dairy, and then all your animal proteins. The thing about gluten is that unless your physician has either tested you for celiacs or for gluten intolerance, I don't actually recommend giving up gluten. It could, you could probably feel better. People say they feel better when they've removed gluten from their diet, but they're essentially reducing their carbohydrates intakes. And so that's sort of the route that I take. I don't want people to eliminate food groups from their diet. The body runs optimally when it has every single vitamin and mineral that it needs. But changing the way we take them in and in what quantities we take them in is really key to managing your PCOS.
Yes, definitely.
And the problem with the gluten is not the gluten by itself. If the one that we have on the market, most of the the major one that we have on the market are from transgenic plants. So that makes a lot of crossover DNA, and we have a lot of DNA on this gluten that creates a lot of intolerance.
Yeah.
But to reduce gluten on the diet is not an easy thing. I mean, if you want to reduce it, you have to reduce it completely to zero, because if not, you are not going to have any effect.
Yes.
So the people that say that I'm reducing gluten and I feel better, I am what you are saying, that is because you are reducing the carbs. It's not the effect of reducing gluten, because to see the effects of gluten, you have to reduce it to zero, not just a little bit.
Yes, and people who have celiacs have to go to extreme measures to reduce gluten from their diet. I mean, they have to use separate cutting boards and separate sections in their kitchen. It is very tedious. Gluten is everywhere. And I bet you can certainly talk to more than I could about how the manufacturers are growing it and how it is actually being put into our food source.
Yes. Yeah, but the problem is that when one thing is a topic, a lot of people just get into that because they hear about what's going on and they feel that they have to follow. It's, for example, like harvesting, the fasting, intermittent fasting, right?
Yeah.
So intermittent fasting, now it seems that we have to do it because if not, we are not healthy.
It's
and
like in.
Yeah, but there are different kinds of intermittent fasting. So what do you think about that? Because it's really an issue there.
Yeah, I have a couple thoughts on intermittent fasting. I work with a lot of reproductive endocrinologists who actually despise it. And I mean, they're physicians, so they definitely know a lot more than I know. But on my very basic dietetics level, I believe that intermittent fasting, when it comes to reproductive health, is not a good decision.
Yes, I don't think so.
Especially with PCOSers, because, you know, what I just talked about, you know, earlier in this was that the key to managing PCOS and insulin resistance is a constant steady stream of food in the system. So if you stop eating at 6 o'clock at night and you start eating at noon the next day, your hormones and your blood sugar are constantly going like this. And that is what we're trying to eliminate. So if you want to stop eating at 6 o'clock at night, that's fine. But we who have sugar issues, because I am insulin resistant, we who have sugar issues, you know, we need to eat within 1 hour of waking. The body itself, naturally, you and me, anybody that is breathing on this earth, within 1 hour of waking has a natural spike in sugar. That's just what we do. But people who don't struggle with insulin resistance or sugar issues, they go up to 99 and then they drop right back down and they can continue their day and they don't feel anything. People like me and like people who have PCOS, we're going to go above 99. And you know, 99 is the healthy range for blood sugar. Anything above 99 and you're struggling. And that's where people who have PCOS, we spike. We go above 99 and we hang out in those upper hundreds, and then our hormones and our organs sort of freak out, right? And we eventually come back down to normal in that breakfast hour, but it isn't without residual effects to the inside. So if we could eat within 1 hour of waking, we are going to prevent that spike from happening. That's the goal. And you want to break your overnight fast with something that's protein rich with a little hit of carbohydrates. So like 10 to 15 grams. So a hard boiled egg and half an apple, something like that.
Yeah. So in that case, you mean, so like a person with insulin resistance or PCOS, right? Just to clarify, if you wake up, let's say, I don't know, 7:30, so you have an hour from 7:30 to 8:30 to eat your breakfast so you don't have that spike of sugar that you are mentioning. Is that right?
That's exactly correct.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, it's good because, you know, sometimes you can get confused. For example, I try not to eat anything after 8 in the night because I know that the body is kind of shut down. So the metabolism kind of, you know, goes slow. And like Esther was saying, you know, I am now, especially now that my husband got diagnosed with Crohn's disease, I think that I mentioned to you that it's terrible. And he's eating now like a bird. He lost like 32 pounds, but he's doing, yeah, it's been a nightmare. And he reduced to 5 meals a day. So he eats, and when he feels full, he stops. And then, you know, maybe 2 hours later, if he feels hungry, he eats a fruit. The intake of, I told him to try, you know, like we were vegan for 6 years. And that's another question that I mentioned to you. And we realized, you know, like we need the food from Mother Earth, because we start to check into what we were eating from the veganism, and it's so much processed food there that wow, it's not ideal. And even soy products can, you know, it's estrogen, a lot of estrogen. I started to notice on my little one, and I used to buy everything organic, but I started to notice that her little chest and his 8, and some weight gain that came, of course, along with the COVID. But then I realized, you know what? No. This is not only from that. And, you know, when we went to the doctor with my husband, he said, listen, it's not only for Crohn's. You need to stop that veganism. They come with a lot of processing things in that food. You just need, like we just said, Laura, be balanced and try, you know, to buy. That's another question that came from another of the audience. They ask about that. How veganism and processed food, if that is coming from now, or, you know, because our body borns basically perfect unless there is some chromosomic issue, like you can see, Esther, we can know. But, you know, all what we have been eating like years ago, like when my mom was little, she could eat eggs and chicken from the little farm, you know, the how you call I always forget that name. I'm sorry. ¿Cómo es que se dice tierra? La tierra donde siembras en inglés.
The land?
Yeah, the land, like the compost. I'm sorry, Lord, I forgot about the word. Where you put the seeds. La tierra negra, ¿cómo se dice en inglés?
Wow, it's a big question. I don't know.
Yeah, you know, like
the compound. The
compound, yes, like you put the seeds and everything. Years ago was, you know, our parents and grandparents, they used, you know, natural things to have it. Today is crazy. Do you think that now all this trend of veganism comes from the fact that there was a point, you know, in certain time that they start to use all these chemicals, Laura? And you know, our bodies came with all of these things?
I do. I mean, this is a great question for you, Esther, as a biologist.
Yes, darling.
But I mean, I read about and research all the chemicals and the fertilizers and the pollutants in the air that our crops and our soil are absorbing. And that in turn comes right back to us. And then if you think about how we shop back then versus how we shop now, you know, food can sit on these grocery shelves for years without spoiling. I actually had a head of lettuce. A head of lettuce that I forgot to take out before I went on vacation. It has sat in my refrigerator now for over 2 weeks, and it has not turned. Like, it is perfectly looking good lettuce. And I think that says something. You know, and my sister came to me the other day, and she's a vegetarian, and she eats very, very clean. And she's like, Laura, did you know that they put wax on apples? And I said, yeah, you know, we studied that in school. So every apple, you know, is beautiful and shiny on the store shelves because it has a nasty coating of wax on it. Well, the average person doesn't know that you need to like scrub that or let it sit in, what is it? Vinegar, right? Vinegar and baking soda to like resolve it. So you're eating wax. And that's because that's what the manufacturers do. So
and we get used of looking at the veggies and the fruits, very nice and perfect, all the same size on the store. And when you go to the ecologic part, you see that all of them are completely different, smaller. Nature doesn't produce a big apple by itself. I mean, something's going on there, right? So we mix here all the contaminants, all the products that we put on the earth to have them to avoid the contaminants, to avoid the bugs. that's toxic, the pollution of the air, and also the transgenics. We are making a lot of transgenics, and the transgenics are on the market. So we are used of looking at the nice, beautiful fruits and veggies. And if you turn to be vegan and you just bought that, you are not eating healthy. Yes. Probably healthy would be to buy on the store for the ecologic ones that you already know that there is no any external product on the earth and any contaminant. But this is very is costly and doesn't look nicer. So one thing is to be vegan, and the other thing is to probably to try to eat healthy.
Doesn't mean that has to be vegan. We change totally our diet, you know, like, and I'd rather invest. Yes, as you say, Esther, it's costly, but I go and I buy all organic, because it's crazy how the world it is, all with this GMO and all of that, right, Laura? And this can be also causes of infertility issues in male and women, you know?
It does. It absolutely can cause sort of this systemic inflammation throughout the body, can cause things to not run properly. It can definitely flare up endometriosis. You know that firsthand. Fun fact, not so fun fact, papaya was actually extinct at one point. So the GMO companies brought back the papaya natural. So every single papaya ever made is a GMO product, man-made. It would actually be extinct without it. So I don't eat papaya.
And I love papaya. I love papaya. That's my favorite fruit, you know. And here it doesn't taste like good, like in Colombia. Yeah. My aunt used to have a big tree and they will fall. But I didn't know that. And look at that. I love papaya.
Yeah, here in the US, it's all GMO. A couple tricks or tips for women who are, you know, on the fence about buying organic versus not, versus inflammation. You can always, you know, fruits and vegetables that have thick skins that are sprayed with chemicals, you know, the chemicals can't really seep in as deep into that fruit or vegetable as it can with a thin skinned fruit or vegetable. So when it comes to bananas, personally, I don't buy organic bananas.
No,
they're not as tainted. But when it comes to apples, plums, and peaches, I am going to go with more of an organic brand. Another trick is to buy seasonal. So if it's seasonal, then you know that it hasn't been transported from California all the way to the, you know, from the East Coast to the West Coast. Mm-hmm. There's less transit time. There's less, you know, the manufacturer doesn't have to make it last longer. And then of course, I'm here in South Carolina where we have fruits and vegetable stands and local produce all over the place.
All the time, yeah.
Yeah. So if you can go and support your local farmer, you're going to get a much higher quality product. And just like Esther said, if you go to the grocery store and you buy an apple, it's like this big. If you go to a local produce shop, it's like this big. And that says something. I mean, you're getting more bang for your buck over here, but this isn't going to kill you.
You are so right. That happens the same with the chickens. They don't produce an egg that is XXL size. Eggs
totally agree.
Are small. Yes. In factor, right?
Yes.
So if you see these big XXL size eggs, you have to think that these poor chickens are stored there and in a very
that is condition. One thing I miss from Colombia, because I used to go walking with my mom to the square, to the vegetable and growth. And it's all farmers, you know? It's all the farmers. So it's the guy, and you see the kids even eating the fruits from the floor, and the apple is this small. The apple is the one that is, I miss that. I just, you know, I go there, you know, the sour soup fruit, they call in Spanish guanábana. ¿Tú la conoces, Esther? It's delicious. You don't find this here. And if you find one in Whole Foods, it's going to be $90. When I get one, I buy one, and it's lasting me. I make it last like for at least 2 weeks. But definitely the food is so important. So I ask you the two questions about sourdough and gluten. Esther, please, if you have more, because
no, I just to finish practical tips for the patients or the audience that can hear us. Can you give us some advice about some fruits and veggies that contains omega-3, that is one of the sources that we are looking for, chromium, also, and vitamin D, that I think that is the most important for PCO to increase in the diet?
So fruits and veggies, they, what fruits and, okay, so an avocado, I'm like racking my brain. Like, so an avocado is has healthy fats. We hear about healthy fats. That healthy fat does contain omega-3s. And just so that the listeners know, omega-3s are healthy fats because they help thin out the blood. And that in turn helps reduce inflammation. So you hear that the heart healthy diet for people who have heart issues or cardiac issues, that's a omega-3 rich type of diet. Fruits and vegetables, fruits don't actually contain any fat. So they don't have omega-3s, but what fruits do have, which does help with PCOS, is they have antioxidants. And an antioxidant is a free radical combating or inflammation reducing type of molecule. So for example, like berries, no, let me be more specific, grapes. Mm-hmm. Grapes contain an antioxidant called resveratrol. So when we hear drinking red wine helps with the heart,
yes,
I listen to that every night, and it's because it has resveratrol, which is helping to reduce inflammation. Oranges have carrots have, and tomatoes, they have lycopene, right? So lycopene is an antioxidant that helps with inflammation. Tomatoes, which do contain lycopene, have actually been tied to reducing chances of prostate cancer in men. So if you are a man, I would highly encourage you to eat some tomatoes once a week to help.
In general, red fruits, right? In general, the red ones.
So if we're looking, so when we talk about eating colorful, that's because those colors have a certain type of antioxidant tied to them. So anything that's white, onions, garlic, that's the allele category. Those have like antibiotic and antifungal properties to them. Things that are like red and purples, those have the resveratrol. Things that have orange and red, oranges are, vitamin C rich. So they sort of go into these different categories. And so when they say literally eat the rainbow, you really do want to eat the rainbow because that's going to help you get all those really good antioxidants. And that helps with, one, it helps with weight maintenance, but it does also help with egg quality.
Yeah, definitely.
Just one thing that let me go through one point is nuts, because nuts are one of the antioxidants also that we have to include in the diet. But as we, on this kind of population, we want to reduce weight, sometimes when we recommend to eat nuts, it's not the same to eat 3 or 4 per day than eat like a lot, right? So which average of nuts do you recommend in a daily basis, for example? Because it's something that is easy to eat, like a snack.
Yeah.
That we have here that has a very nice properties and healthy, but on the contrast can have the thing,
the
right?
opposite, yes.
The opposite effect.
Yeah. So they are high in fat content, but they do have those omega-3s in them. Yeah. And they also have fiber, so certain seeds. When we talk about nuts, let's also talk about seeds. I like those two categories together. So with nuts, I recommend all nuts, but in, like Esther said, in a certain serving. So you're not going to want to eat a whole pound of pistachios. That's not going to do good for anybody. But, one serving per meal of pistachios, walnuts.
What is one serving? Just
1 tablespoon.
1 tablespoon.
Wow. 2 tablespoons?
2.
Okay.
Yeah. And then 1 serving of seeds, I believe, is 1 teaspoon. And that's of like chia seeds or what's another good one? Hemp. Yep.
Hemp. Yes.
And is that true that you have to, in order to have the effect of the chia seeds, you have to use it with water, irritated, not just to put it on the salad, for example, dry?
I've never heard that. I know with water enters the seed and sort of expands it.
Yes.
But I think it's going to do the same thing in your system, right? I mean, it's going to hit the stomach.
If we think of the biology of that, it looks the same because once in your system will hydrate. Yeah. But I have here that the effect is different, but it's a whole a lot of different opinions about that. So it's why I was asking.
I use the chia seeds in water when I want to do the pudding, the chia pudding. Oh my God, that's because it gives that pudding consistency. I like it much more like that. So I leave it in the refrigerator then from a night, and then I add like honey and some raspberries, and it's perfect. And it gives that consistency of not like chewing the seed itself. But I guess it gives the same kind of effect. Yes.
I never heard about that, but I mean, I'm thinking through it, and I'm with Esther. I mean, it's going to absorb one way or another with water or without it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and our body, in the
stomach. Inside, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
I mean, well, Esther, I don't even think I answered your original question about omega-3s. I went straight into fruit.
No, in general, for example, if we're telling them to increase in omega-3, which ingredients they have to choose, for example, no? I mean, in the meal plan.
Yeah. So an easy way to get omega-3s, which are healthy fats, into your system are obviously through avocados. You can do olives. You can do olive oils. You can do olive oil salad dressings. Fish. All fish have great omega-3s. Anything that's kind of in that fat category. There's a really good diet called the Mediterranean diet. And that is very heavy on fresh fruits and vegetables and healthy fats. So if anybody who's listening wants to try a diet, and it's not a diet, it's not even like an elimination diet. It actually is a very well-balanced, heavy on omega-3s, encouraged lifestyle. It's actually one of the diets that you give to people with heart conditions and or with diabetes. It actually does encourage a lot of spices too. Spices are, cinnamon is a natural anti-inflammatory product.
Yes.
Turmeric, girls, if you have PCOS and you can incorporate turmeric and cinnamon into your daily routine, do it. The problem one of the things with PCOS is that we have systemic inflammation. We're not running on all cylinders. Our body is not running optimally. So what we have to do is essentially calm it down. And that's what those omega-3s are going to do. That's what those spices are going to do. That's what the fruit is going to do. So that's why I always, my girls who do, on days that they working out actually produces inflammation, right?
Yes.
You have, your muscles are breaking down. They're releasing things into the blood system. So on the days that my girls work out, I always have them do a protein shake in the morning with a serving of berries, a serving of cinnamon, a serving of turmeric to help combat that inflammation that you're about to produce later with your elliptical workout or your run or whatever the case may be. And then of course protein.
Yeah. We do here, and I encourage everybody, it's me, my husband, and my girls, before a breakfast, I take my juicer, I put green apple. So the recipe for the 4 is 4 green apples, few roots of turmeric, half a root of ginger, and 2 lemon peels. I put it in the juicer. Is amazing because of course turmeric has anti-inflammatory advantages. Also it's good for the joints and it's balanced. Ginger and lemon are antibiotic, and green apple is kind of the neutral fruit that you can mix with all juicing and fruits. Incredible. I don't have that inflammation issue that I used to have normally, especially when my period is close to come because I have endometriosis. And I think it has all the nutrients for starting the day. This gives us a shot of energy. It's incredible. And my husband says that with his Crohn's now, it's kind of giving him that boost. So I guess that's for that too.
I'm really happy you just said that. That sounds amazing. I'm gonna actually have to try that.
It's amazing.
I was just researching peppermint and mint and the spearmint, that category.
Yes.
And there's a lot of literature that's showing from a Crohn's standpoint or from like a gut inflammatory standpoint that it actually soothes the inner muscle of the small and large intestine.
The mint too?
Mint, yeah.
That's awesome, and it's also great for PCOS because PCOS is also that inflammatory part of the thing. Yep. So Laura and Esther, I really think that our webinar today was incredible and is full of so much advice and really great information that is not only going to help to PCOS, because endometriosis is also an inflammatory thing. And I think all what you say can also be apply to women and to even male factor, because that's something that we need to create more awareness. Male factor is something that is still too quiet, too there on the side, and it needs to be talked about. So I want to leave both of you with a last advice before we close our webinar. Please, Laura and Esther.
Thank you. If you have PCOS, there is hope. Don't feel discouraged. I always recommend that you take control of what's going on in your environment. That's all you can do. And then seek help from the professional clinic. So if you can do the holistic at-home things and then couple it with traditional medicine, I think that's sort of the best case scenario, because sometimes it takes a village to get pregnant or to reach whatever goal that you're trying to reach. And just, look into reducing inflammation, balancing out your intake each day, and always have a plan. My clients, I require that they make weekly meal plans and log their food daily for the first 30 days. This is so that you can see what you're eating and when you're eating it. And it's crucial to having whatever your goal is. In my case, it's a baby, right?
Yes.
So those are just my basic tips. I do my company is called LG Nutrition, and I do virtual one-on-one consultations, and we work together one-on-one for as long or as short as anybody would want. And so I am a PCOSer. I am you. I've been here before, and so I take a long look at you as a person and as a woman. And your needs. And that's how, I think that's why I'm successful. And that's why I get women pregnant.
And you yourself got pregnant too.
I did. I definitely optimized my egg quality. I got to tell you, I had an IVF cycle and I produced 25 eggs, which came down to 10 embryos and 0 fertilized.
Yeah.
Zero made it to day 5. And then 3 months later, I changed a whole lot of stuff around and did it again. And now I have my daughter. So there is something to say about what goes into your body.
Absolutely. Esther, last advice for
we're strong believers on that. I mean, it's not only medicine. Medicine is one part of the chain. Doctors do a great job. IVF lab embryologists do an amazing job, because the IVF is the heart of the clinic. But we need the patients to arrive at the best state mentally and physically. That means that we need the patients to be healthy, to do their part. And at the clinic, we approach that we have that approach. I mean, we are not doing only medicine. We try to integrate all other professionals inside the treatment, because really patients can do a lot at their home in order to increase the success of the treatment. Because if one part, the doctors are doing one part, and then on the other side, we are treating ourselves bad in terms of nutrition and in terms of stress, is not going to work. So we have to be balanced, and it's very important, that part. So yeah, I agree with you, Laura.
Definitely. And we are here, the 3 pieces of the puzzle, the part of nutrition, I support the emotional part and mindfulness because definitely it has to be connected. And our medical part with Esther is all things that create balance, definitely. And this is something that, thank God, is today happening. I didn't have that. That's why I was all over the place too. But today is the three pieces need to link together: nutrition, wellness, health, emotional, mindfulness, and definitely our clinic. And the clinic needs to be with members that are kind and compassionate. And this is my piece of advice to all our audience. When you go to your clinic, check on that three links: your nutrition, what they are offering you for nutrition, what they are offering you for emotional and mindfulness, and of course, the doctors. Thank you very much, everybody, for being here. This is gonna be posting our YouTube channels, Facebook, and if you have questions, you can post them in the comments. It's gonna be also on Instagram, so you can tag Laura, Esther through Repro Clinic, and me, and we will be answering your questions in the comments too. Let us know also if you want to talk, if you want us to bring any subject that will be interesting for you, and we will definitely do it. Thank you very much, everyone, and I will see you. We will see you next time.